What's been going on in the sports card market overall? It's time for another market update. Let's data dive. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Data Dive powered by Market Movers. My name is Tyler Nethercott, better known as Teapot, and it's time for another market update. You know we like to zoom out every few months and provide you with an update on the sports card prices overall, a more macro view of what has been happening. Now, knowing the ebbs and flows of things in general can help you laser into more specific players, how their prices might have changed respective to the market, and whether or not it might be a good time to buy or sell right now. As always, this video is brought to you by Market Movers, featuring dozens of different market pulse indexes to help you understand the hobby market overall in an instant. Visit marketmoversapp.com and use promo code DIVE for your first 7 days free. And now let's get into the data. So the first thing that I want to do here is I want to look at a few of the overall financial markets. What's the stock market been doing? Some of the key indexes. And this is not to say one-to-one that these things are the same as sports cards. There's been a lot of debate about that over the last year on social media, and I, for one, am of the opinion that these markets are different. A lot of differences between the two, but there's one thing in common, and that is the general shift of the broader economy has a huge impact on sports card prices overall. That is undeniable. So we'll look at some things for context here and kind of keep this in mind. And the first one, great one to start with, the S&P 500, Standard & Poor. This one is down 9.15% in the last year, down 9.15%. If we jump over and we look at the Dow, that one down just 2% in the last year. So if you're parking your money in the Dow, you're feeling a lot better than you are in certain other areas, especially in sports cards over the last year. Down 2% on the Dow. The NASDAQ down 18%. And then jumping over to the Russell 3000, down 9%. So what we see here, 2% all the way to 18, 19%. A lot of variation. We know that different stocks and different bonds and other things perform differently. In real time, it's updating. It just went down as we're sitting here at Refreshed. Now we can jump over and look at some of our market pulse indexes. And the first thing that I always like to look at is our sports card investor SCI 500. This is 500 of the most notable cards in sports, and we put them into this index so that you can track the value of them overall. So over the last 90 days, this index down 8% over the last 90 days. That's obviously a lot worse than some of these other ones, which are down less than that over the last year. Let's go to the last 365 days and see what's been going on with the SCI 500. And you can see down 25%. So we know there was the huge boom in sports cards over the last few years. Not surprising then to see these things coming down, and that's what goes up must come down, as they say. So over the last few years, we saw cards outpace the market overall. In fact, we've seen that historically, frankly. We've seen sports cards, key iconic cards, outpace much of the stock market. There's always the problem of liquidity, of finding a buyer, and that's one of the big differences between stocks and cards. But overall down 25% when you look at these things overall. And we love to use this as a benchmark because this is a big variety of cards. It's key iconic cards. It's also more modern recent cards that were hyped up during different periods. So it's a really nice mix, and we think a great representation of the card hobby overall and what's been going on with prices. So if we jump over, I'm gonna look at these by eras now. I'm comparing the key, 4 of the key sports by era, being baseball, basketball, football, and hockey. And over the last 365 days, what we see is that ultra-modern, the most ultra-modern cards are the ones that have gotten beaten up the worst. And a big part of this is, when we build these indexes, we're including the key rookies, a variety of the key rookies from each of these classes. And what happens over time, and I've talked about this in recent videos, is that the vast majority of those rookie cards go down in price as these players don't work out or just become average or even just become all-stars. Their prices tend to go down from the initial pre-baked hype. And as a result of that, even when you have some players like Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Luka going up in these time frames, they're not carrying, it's not enough to carry the rest of the overall index. And so that's what we see in the more ultra-modern stuff. So this one down, baseball down the most, down 54.8%. Basketball down right behind it, 47.7%. Football down 33%. And hockey down 41.6%. Staying ultra modern, if we jump in 2010 to 2017, so this is what we kind of think of right before kind of the Panini era, so to speak, before the big boom in 2018, 2019 really took off. And this one actually in many places doing worse than the other era. And that's probably not surprising either. Why is that not surprising? Because those players, the ones from this era, are now, many of them, truly irrelevant or truly known commodities. We talk about this sort of like 5 to 6 year curve to see what's going to happen with a player. And I've done a video in the past showing every year you go back, take basketball for example, from this year all the way back to 2012, and you look at the number of rookies who have value, cards of notable value. I've compared like all the Prism base, Prism silvers, things like that. You see the number of players like over $100 go from like 15 on a Prism Silver PSA 10 in a draft class, down to 13, down to 11, down to 7, down to 2. It just dwindles and dwindles. And so you see this erosion in these prices over time more and more. And I would expect to see that continue. Even if the broader hobby as overall continues to go up, we could see a big differences between this index and the SCI 500, which is comprised of a whole variety of eras and different things. So down 41% on baseball, not as bad actually as the 2018 to 20, but then basketball down 50%, football down 59.7%. We know that Patrick Mahomes cards, in spite of what he's doing, in spite of being in yet another 5th conference championship game, potentially en route to his 3rd Super Bowl game, and for sure I would say his 2nd MVP this year, down 59.7%, and a lot of that does have to do with Mahomes cards, among other athletes. Moving on down here, 35%, so softer on hockey. We saw a big run up on hockey card prices this last year, kind of heading into the hockey season, and then things cooled off during and after the season, so that's also down. Let's go to the next era prior to that. This is 2000 to 2009. This is the period when I was least involved in sports cards since I've been collecting. Didn't do a lot in the 2000s. And these ones are down as well. Obviously, you have a lot of great athletes from this era. Many of them retired, some of them not, like LeBron, who's still continuing to play, but down 28% on baseball. I think, Pujols seeing some life on his card prices. Ichiro's been holding strong. Certain other athletes from baseball still doing okay. Miguel Cabrera, Verlander. And then you get into basketball and football, both down 47, almost 48%, and hockey much softer, down 17%. So hockey actually doing, from this era, doing better than the SCI 500 as a whole. Let's go back now to the 90s, my favorite era for sports cards, the 90s, and you're seeing better numbers collectively on this era than the others, and this is going to be a trend we'll see. So down 23%, 32%, 26, and 25 on the 4 respective sports, starting to see them fall more in line with that SCI 500. Going back, now we're looking at the 80s, the junk wax era as it's commonly called. And you see some kind of funny things here. A lot of the price movements very, very, very consistent. And then all of a sudden football, kind of interesting, actually going up in this time frame. So 80s football cards actually going up. Some of these cards more rare, some of them very iconic. You've obviously got, Dan Marino and John Elway, and you've got, some of the most notable guys from that era in the 80s, and that's up 6%. So kind of encouraging to see that. If you were buying into more vintage or post-vintage football cards, you're feeling pretty good about that right now. Baseball down 12%. 80s basketball down 31%. That's very interesting because obviously you've got some of the biggest names in that era, most notably Michael Jordan, but you've got that entire 86 Fleer product. You've got Magic Johnson, you've got Larry Bird, you've got the Dr. J card with those other 2 guys on there. So that one got beat up pretty badly, and then down 23.5% on hockey from the 80s. Let's keep going back. This will be the last one, and we're looking at basically vintage, post-war vintage, 60s to the 70s. I do have, basketball and football being and older. Some of these indexes for baseball, for example, and hockey with much older cards than basketball and football. We have another index. I didn't pull that in. But in general, take a look at this, down 8% on baseball. Not too bad, not too bad. That's kind of in line with some of the broader, financial markets that we saw collectively, but down 24% still on vintage basketball. I know a lot of people feeling very, very optimistic and bullish about that era, going back and looking at those cards, Wilt Chamberlain, Dr. J, Pete Maravich, Elgin Baylor, others. And then you get into hockey down 8.7%. So the big one down here, basketball down 24%. Once again, football, 1979 and older, up 4.5%. Now the question here is this timing related? Are there just so many eyes on football right now because it's the season? that we would see something different. Not really, though. If you look at this last year and you actually chart it out, football in general was actually doing a lot better. It was actually up around 15%, and it's been steadily coming down as some of these other ones have been coming down, but still outperforming. So pretty interesting. Many of those cards have very low population counts, and there's not a ton of them. So if you're really chasing the most iconic ones, obviously the Walter Payton and Johnny Unitas and other guys, then that's going to be, something that obviously is performing very well. Remains to be seen how those will do in 2023. Now, one last index to look at here, and this is soccer. Rather than, lacing those into these other ones, I'm just putting soccer in here. We're limited to 4 indexes just so that the chart doesn't get too crazy. So we'll look at all these, and soccer beat up pretty badly as well. Now, 2018 to 2020, ironically, doing the best of all these soccer indexes. I think this has everything to do with the fact that soccer is an upcoming sport. Even in the United States, a lot of young kids playing soccer, a lot of people whose parents, dads maybe played football growing up, afraid of concussions, shifting to soccer, although that's not without its concussion risk. But a lot more popularity certainly on modern soccer. And I hear a lot of people say that they love playing the FIFA video games, and that just gets them into wanting cards. They play with their favorite athletes on there, and they want to buy their cards. This is certainly also probably helped by the fact that Messi cards have been going up, and we do have some of those in this index. You've got Erling Haaland, you've got Kylian Mbappe, you've got other guys who have been blowing up. So down 22%. The other one's not doing well at all. 2010 to 2017 and 2000 to 2009, which is going to be really a lot of Messi and Ronaldo type cards, down significantly. And then the 90s, what we might call more vintage soccer, but not truly vintage, down 32.7%. So there's obviously a lot older soccer cards. The problem with those in terms of building an index is even when you get into the Pele and Maradona cards and Beckenbauer and these guys, the pop, there's a lot of different cards, and then the pop counts are very low, and they're distributed across a whole range of grades. So trying to find cards that transact often enough to build chart trends is a little bit more difficult with vintage soccer, something we continue to give some thought to. So that's what's been going on with these cards as a whole overall. Now, you know that I like to shift over and look at price movements. So let's do that quickly. Last 365 days, shifting over to price movements, we've talked about Tage Thompson here. He's been blowing up, obviously having a really strong year, up 567% collectively on his prices to an average price on a bunch of cards of $76. And then just take a look at this. I'm going to be honest, some of these guys I'm not really too familiar with, and it's because I've said it before. I'm not a big baseball prospector, but some of the, you're going to see a lot of baseball, hockey, basketball with Markkanen having obviously a nice comeback year. Still not sure about his prices long term. I don't think he's going to take another leap forward, but he's playing very well this year with the Jazz. Baseball, then you got Jalen Hurts and Brock Purdy. We know that they've blown up a lot. More baseball, hockey. It's all baseball and hockey on this top list of cards. Again, that might be something to do with timing. I'm not entirely surprised. This is typically when people start getting really excited about prospecting. It's also when you have some different Bowman products coming out and everything. So I think the eyes and the focus shifts back to that, people getting ready for the season. This probably has a lot to do with it. If you were to go 2 months ago, you're probably going to see a lot more football in here, a lot more basketball. So some of it is definitely circumstantial to timing. Now, the last thing that I want to leave you with is 2 comparisons. I created some saved searches that I like to check in periodically in our card charts. And so I'm going to go over to the first one, and this is a really cool one in my opinion. It's kind of a GOAT comparison, a modern GOAT comparison. We've got LeBron, we've got Alexander Ovechkin, we've got Tom Brady, Mike Trout, and then we've got Lionel Messi. And I pulled up different cards of, let's say, comparable baseline price range to see who do you think is going to go up the most? Who would be the best bet in the next year, in 2023? And I want you to let me know down in the comments, please. I ran these polls on Instagram, the results. Surprising, maybe a little bit, and I think I disagree, but I ran this poll on Instagram without Messi, and I just said, who do you think is going to go up the most this year? And it was like 50% LeBron. A lot of people obviously feeling very bullish about LeBron, about to break the scoring record. I think a healthy debate could be had about whether or not that's going to impact LeBron's card markets, and I would generally say I don't think it's going to. It's a foregone conclusion that he's going to break the record. We know he's going to break it, and then he's going to keep going. I think there's a big difference between LeBron and Curry last year when he broke the three-point record and that's that Curry is generally liked by everybody. I don't know of a lot of people who don't like Curry, unless it's because they don't like the Warriors. Most people really like, he's just very likable. LeBron is polarizing. People either really love LeBron and they're diehard collectors and they think he's the greatest of all time or one of the top two, whatever, or they don't like LeBron. And when he breaks this record, I don't see a lot of people who are over in the camp saying, well, I don't like LeBron, now rushing out to buy LeBron cards because he breaks the scoring record. I think they're going to have the same opinion of him and still say, I don't really want any of his cards, and put me in that camp. No disrespect to LeBron, just a lot of history between my favorite teams and him, and calls going his way, in my opinion, that were questionable. Just not a LeBron fan, and I'm not going to rush out to buy any of his cards for my PC. Now, would I buy some maybe to flip? Because I think long-term they're going to be of value, maybe. But really interesting, the guy who got the most votes to say that he was going to go down the most this year is Mike Trout. And I think people keep doubting Mike Trout. I don't know why people doubt Mike Trout, and I really think that no matter what happens, his cards are going to hold value long-term. Why do I think that? Because Mike Trout, in spite of not winning championships or even making the playoffs, baseball really doesn't have much to do with that. And when Mike Trout's career is done, I think at least statistically, in terms of WAR and other things, people are going to have him in that top 10 to top 15 greatest hitters of all time, greatest positional players of all time, just based on what he's been able to do and sheer dominance in terms of, he's basically been the LeBron of baseball. The difference is in baseball, you cannot put a team on your back by what you can do, no matter what. Even the best seasons in history, it doesn't matter. You can do that, and your team can still miss the playoffs because it's such a team sport. You got pitching, you got fielding, you got hitting, you got all these different things. I'm pretty bullish on Mike Trout, and part of the reason why I'm bullish on Mike Trout is because he's already come down 34.6% on this card. His cards are down. You know who's up? Ovechkin. People are wondering if he can break the goal scored record of Wayne Gretzky. It's possible. He's got to keep going. LeBron, I think they know. He's kind of flat. Messi just saw a big peak in his prices, started to come down some, and Tom Brady's here. So it's an interesting debate. I don't have a crystal ball. I really don't know. I could make an argument either direction for all these guys. No matter what, it's probably a safe-ish investment long-term to look at these cards, especially above the Brock Purdy's and Mac Jones of the world. So similar comparison, but not modern playing. Let's go and look at some older GOATs. This is a little bit trickier because card prices kind of end up all over the place, and maybe that's indicative of what would happen with those more modern guys. But I pulled up a different mix here, some basketball players, hockey, and football. And I want to know, again, let me know down in the comments, who do you think is the safest to go up here? I threw Walter Payton on here. He's not in the same price range. He's at $5,000 on his PSA 9, pop 692 on his 1976 Topps rookie card here. But it's down 23% over the last 180 days. Larry Bird, interestingly, down 25% sitting at $16,000 now. Still higher than the most recent sale here, which was about 7 weeks after the Bird on the Magic Johnson at $13,600. These are close in population, pop 74, pop 63. I don't know that that's different enough to really be driving that difference, but obviously there's this eternal debate about who was greater, Bird or Magic. It's fun to look at that as a comparison. Down here on the bottom, I've got their shared card, and that's down 31% with Dr. J, down to $12,400 in a PSA 9 pop 620. So let me know, who would you pick? If you had, let's say, $15,000 to throw into a card, are you buying the Magic, the Jordan PSA 9? Are you buying a Wayne Gretzky O-Pee-Chee PSA 8, the Walter Payton in a 9, Larry Bird in a 10, or the shared Bird, Dr. J, and Magic card? Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear it and hear your rationale if you've got the time to explain it. So what do you think? Any surprises here? Any market surprises over the last year? Which of your predictions worked out the best and which ones worked out the worst? Let me know. And if you want to get this data, visit marketmoversapp.com and use promo code DIVE to get the first 7 days free. Thanks so much as always for watching. Until next time, happy investing, keep on collecting, and make sure to have fun.